All right, so I wanted to make a quick video about a tweet that I put out the other day. This was from Friday, actually. Bitcoin has never been more undervalued than it is today, and I very much believe this. First things first, if you get value out of the video, please like, subscribe, comment, check out those links below. Very much appreciate the support. So, recently, I talked about it quite a bit in the video yesterday. We had the announcement of the Bitcoin or crypto strategic reserve, and this is one of the most bullish things to ever happen when it comes to Bitcoin. And I know it was disappointing because we expected more, but like I mentioned as well, number one, they've clearly left the door open to buy more Bitcoin, number one. Number two, they clearly value Bitcoin more than they do the other altcoins. And number three, like this is by far, like there's leaps and bounds the most crypto-friendly or even Bitcoin-friendly administration we've ever seen. In fact, up until this point, I don't think there's one that's even acknowledged it, and if they have, it's been hostile. So, I don't know why the market sold off. Like frankly, Bitcoin right now should be at like an all-time high. Like it should be probably 10 or 20,000 above the all-time high, at the very least, to be honest. And the reason for that is that we got exactly what we wanted. Now, like I said, it wasn't exactly to the extent that we wanted, but it may very well not happen all at once. And this is another thing that I think that people don't quite seem to realize, is that it's not all going to happen at once. I mean, the government's like, let's just say, 4 years from now, they've bought another 500,000 Bitcoin. Like, how realistic was they're going to, like, yeah, we're going to lump sum buy $500,000 in Bitcoin, like, sorry, a half a million coins. Like, I don't know how they would even go about that, because who's going to have all that liquidity? I mean, I don't think there's an exchange there's 500,000 coins just laying around. And maybe one could come up, I'm sure one of them could come up, Coinbase or a Binance could come up with the coins, but that's just would be very awkward and just weird. So, to me, whether or not we're 10 out of 10 bullish or 5 out of 10 or 1 out of 10, it all comes down to what do they do in the future. If they remove the capital gains tax, if they continue to buy more, that is a 10 out of 10. And that's most likely what they're going to do. Like, the question is not if they're going to buy more Bitcoin. The question is how much more are they going to buy. If it's a very small amount, okay, I can understand the concern. But it's most likely going to be quite a bit. I mean, there's no way that they don't constantly have Michael Saylor in their ears and they're not going to buy more. Like, why in the world would they let a private company have more Bitcoin than they do? Like, to me, that just doesn't make sense. Like, I don't know why you would even start in the first place if the goal wasn't to have the most. Like, I understand why you would, but why would the goal not be to have the most? To me, that just doesn't completely make sense. So, the whole point of this video is Bitcoin has never been more undervalued than it is today. And the reason for that is that, I mean, if you would have asked someone 3, 4, 5 years ago, and you'd have told them exactly where we stand today, there's no way that they would have said, hey, the high for this coming cycle in 2020, 2021 is 69,000, and after all this stuff that's happened, we're between 85 and 90,000, at least at the time of me making this video. Like, that's like what, 40% above the high, maybe 50. I don't know. Just off the top of my head, there's no, like, the average person. The average Bitcoiner would have said, like, we're going to be at 500,000 or 1 million a coin. Like, that's probably what they would have said. I would probably set the over-under at 500,000 a coin. And we're still below 100. Like, we're still below 100. My prediction for the longest time has been 200, 300,000 this cycle. I'm still fairly confident in that, even though we're still a long ways off that. I'm still fairly confident. And another thing that makes me fairly confident as well is that with the ETFs, with all this institutional buying, with all these governments that are already buying and are going to start buying, one thing that I think is going to change in the future is I don't think we're going to see the massive drawdowns. I don't think we're necessarily going to see, hey, we're going to go up 5 to 10x every cycle. I think we're probably going to taper off to maybe 20-25% a year, which means we'd go up roughly 100 to 200% per cycle. But I think that the days of 80% pullbacks, in the later half of the halving cycle, I don't think that's going to happen. And the reason for that is that, number one, the pressure on the buy side it's going up. Like the pressure on the buy side is only going up, and the pressure on the downside, where's it going to come from? I mean, we have less coins available. We have way less coins available, and we have more people wanting to buy. We're still going to have these 20, 30, 40% corrections, out of the blue, seemingly, but I don't see how. Like, what would have to happen for us to go back down to like 30 or 40,000, whatever 80% from 108 to 109,000 would be. Like, we'd have to have a lot of stuff go wrong. Like, even if a big exchange went belly up, like that's not bringing us down that much. Like, the government, like the American, like if they would have came out and said, hey, we're not adopting a strategic reserve, and an exchange went belly up or MicroStrategy went belly up, that would be possible. But MicroStrategy's loans are covered very, very well out to beyond the next halving cycle. So MicroStrategy, the chances of them going belly up is extremely low. So that's probably out of the question. The major exchanges, I mean, I think that there's more scrutiny on them after FTX, so that's unlikely. And even if it does happen, it's still not. So, like, what is going to cause these major drawbacks? I don't see it. Bitcoin is more volatile than stocks and real estate, et cetera, and it's almost certainly going to stay that way. So we are going to see these 20, 30, 40, maybe even 50% corrections. But the big, gigantic corrections, the 80, 90% ones, I don't think we're going to see it. I think that the volatility will simply level out a little bit, and that'll impact Bitcoin on both ends. If you go back a decade, Bitcoin has averaged about a 60% return per year. I think over the next decade, we're probably looking at like 20, 30%. That's my base case. And then, which means, hey, we're going to see a lot less volatility on the upside. We're probably going to see a lot less volatility on the upside. And another thing that is not being talked about as well is that this is just the early stages of this. Like, you really think that the Americans are going to start hodling all this Bitcoin and some other countries aren't going to follow? You really think that MicroStrategy's strategy is you think that other companies aren't going to continue doing this? Like Metaplanet, the miners are doing it. Tesla actually, I believe, increased their Bitcoin holdings over the last quarter. So the list goes on. My base case has always been that I don't think that the majority of people will ever adopt Bitcoin, the majority of maybe even corporations as well. And the reason for that is that, I mean, the majority of people are either ignorant or they're too stubborn to admit they're wrong. I mean, look at the existing population, right? I mean, all the knowledge in the world to be financially well off is out there. Like and then frankly, the vast majority of it you can get for free. It's not like you have to pay for it. But yet, look at how many people are still broke. Look at how many people still live paycheck to paycheck. So Bitcoin's going to keep doing its thing. But at the end of the day, I still think that the majority of people aren't going to get their heads out of their behinds because, like I mentioned, all of the knowledge in the world to be financially well off is already out there, and yet the majority of people still refused to change. So what makes you think that's going to change with Bitcoin? So my base case, that's why I'm not quite as bullish as some people, but I still think that, I mean, I think we're looking at like 1 or 2, 3% adoption globally. I think that number goes up to 20, 30, maybe 40%. So we still have a lot of room to run. Like, that implies that we're still going into the millions of dollars a coin. And I mean, that's not even accounting for, the increase in the money supply and that kind of stuff. So a lot of people probably say, when do you think that we've reached that equilibrium point to where we've seen that point to where we're going to see diminishing returns? And my base case for that is still the same as when I originally put this out, is that when it's a normal thing for corporations to allocate a certain percentage of their cash to Bitcoin, when it's a normal thing for financial advisors to recommend, whatever 2, 3, 4, 5% in Bitcoin, 10%, whatever the number is, when it's a normal thing for pension funds to do it, when it's a normal thing even for countries to do it. Once that's all done and it's at least 10 or 20, 30%, then we'll know. Then we'll know, hey, maybe we've reached that point, that equilibrium point, to where we're going to see diminishing returns, and we're probably going to see more, stock-like returns. Frankly, I think Bitcoin will always outperform stocks unless the government starts running, balanced budgets and starts truly being fiscally responsible. I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. So take that for what you will. But that's my base case. Right? That's really my base case. Given what we know, I don't see how you could conceivably have an argument as to why Bitcoin shouldn't be at an all-time high right now. I think that the reason that it's not an all-time high is that the stock market has sold off recently. That's my personal opinion. Is that this stocks have been down quite a bit recently, and I think that's the main reason why Bitcoin is down. And a lot of people would probably point to that as, hey, you guys are saying, oh, it's independent. It's not, the classic, oh, it's just, the NASDAQ. But at the end of the day, Bitcoin is open 24/7, and when people need liquidity, they need liquidity. So this is another thing that I don't think that Bitcoin necessarily ever completely decouples from the stock market. But it is going to gradually do that over time, because at the end of the day, people will realize gradually over time that it is the best form the best way to hedge yourself against inflation, and the best way to hedge yourself against governments, government overreach, and the banksters, like the bank overreach. A lot of people say, oh, Bitcoin's the best form of money. To me, that's not my big concern. Like, the big concern for the average person, it's not, hey, I want to be able to transact privately, without the government knowing, or even with the government knowing, whether it's privately or not, with cryptocurrency. I don't think that's the big problem. That is a problem we face, but that's not anywhere close to the biggest problem. I've said time and time again that the biggest problem that the average person faces is maintaining and growing their purchasing power. And on top of that, being able to do it in a way that the government or the banks can't stop you from doing. That is the biggest concern. And a lot of people say, oh, Bitcoin's not private. And it's like, okay, well, these are the same people that still think that gold is better than Bitcoin oftentimes, even though gold is underperformed by orders of magnitude if you go back a decade or 15 years, even 5 years. And these are also the same people oftentimes that, again, if you still think that gold is superior to Bitcoin, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, number one, you ain't transacting in gold privately. Maybe small amounts, but you're not. How are you doing it with $1 million? This is the last little rant I'll have here. But if you want to send someone if you want to transact with someone privately in gold for $1 million, $10 million, even $100,000, are you? Maybe you show up with a duffel bag or a hockey bag full of gold, but what if it's in another country? What if it's across the country? That's just not realistic. So this idea that, oh, well, gold's more private than Bitcoin, get out of here. Get out of here. Because you're not. The only way that you would be able to do it with someone that's in another country or across the country is if there's a centralized third party that's the middleman. And if that's the case, it's not private. So I don't get where people get this argument. It's so poorly thought out, it's not even funny. Yes, the government can track you with Bitcoin, but that's only if you let them. If you really want to transact privately with Bitcoin, you can do it. Like, it's not like it's impossible. Like, you really can do it. Like, it doesn't take that much expertise. Yeah, it takes some, but it's a heck of a lot less than having to pay however much it would cost to insure to ship $1 million in gold to someone, or the amount of trust that you have to trust that your bank is, yeah, they're going to give that, the other guy the $1 million in gold. So that was the last little rant I wanted to have here. So anyway, would love to hear other people's thoughts. Like I mentioned at the start of the video, please like, subscribe, comment, check out those links below. Very much appreciate the support, and stay tuned for more.